Well, you have probably experienced the increase in video conferencing meetings or just remote meetings this week as everybody gets used to the new normal. And I bet that you're also realizing it's important to dial in the meeting message. So you've got an agenda and talking points and data and next steps, and you are ready to communicate it all. And I want you to take a step back and I want you to think about how much time you spend preparing the questions that you ask during those meetings, particularly the ones that come at the beginning and the end, the ones that sound like this. Hey, how's everybody doing today? And the one that wraps up the meeting that sounds like this. Does anybody have anything else to add? Now, I know what we're doing with those two questions. We're asking open-ended questions, and we're trying to get people engaged in interacting, particularly in a new setting that they might not be used to. But neither of those questions is going to get us to our ultimate objective, because asking questions that are so open-ended like that are more likely to lead to a non-response or something that is so far off topic, you got to wrangle everybody back in together, than actually being productive. I want you to think about the best conversations that you have, the most productive, the most engaging, the ones that you really enjoy having, the ones that might happen with a best friend or a spouse. How often does that conversation start with, "How are you?" versus something very specific and focused? Hey, how did your mom respond when you told her that you weren't going to go home for the holidays? Hey, how did that pasta making experience go the other night? Right? Your best friends, the people closest to you, know something about you that allow them to start the conversation with something very focused and direct. And in return, you now tell the story and you are more engaged. Now, I want to be very clear on something. Asking how are you is not a bad sentiment, particularly in this time when there's a lot of uncertainty. But we have to go beyond that basic question and think about the objective. If the objective is to get somebody to share what's on their heart and feel comfortable enough to do so, whether they're stressed out, they're worried, they're anxious, they're unproductive because their kids are in the house, we've got to ask a question that gets them to that point. Something like, hey, I know that everybody's been staying in, so I'm just curious, what's the best meal you've made at home this week? Now, I don't really care whether they are great cooks and they cooked a gourmet meal or the only thing they were able to manage was heating up a can of soup in the pantry. The point is they're going to share a story that helps reveal what it is that they're dealing with. And now you can be more supportive and you've got a better frame of reference as to where they're coming from. At the end of the meeting, instead of just having it be open-ended for anybody to contribute anything or nothing at all, it needs to be really direct. Something like, does anybody have anything else to add about our rollout process for the new product next month? Does anybody have anything to add about the audit and the paperwork we need to make sure is supplied to accounting? Either of those questions, any question that's like that helps to focus the conversation. Now, I also want to explain this. As somebody who has talked to remote crowds for a very long time, right? 20 years in sports broadcasting. What we're trying to do with those questions is make something that's very conversational, where people feel comfortable, where they can let their guard down. And most people think that in order for something to be conversational, it is off the cuff. I will tell you that it looks like it's off the cuff if you're watching me and a lot of my colleagues on TV or listening on radio to them doing that, because we're very good at being strategic with the questions that we ask. All good conversations like that start with focusing the questions, understanding the objective, and being really direct in how we ask that question. So I'm just going to leave you with that. Make sure that you're spending time strategizing the questions you ask because you know that you've got the message of the meeting down. But connecting with people requires just a little bit more intentionality with those questions. Then you'll get a more productive conversation. You'll understand what's on their hearts. You'll be able to support them. You'll be able to problem solve a little bit better. Speaking of problem solving, I might be able to solve some of your problems around business communication, particularly with your remote teams these days. Send me an email, Jen, Jen, at talksportytome.com if you're interested in more training, and keep an eye out in this space. I'll keep posting videos for the next several weeks just to make sure you've got a resource.